Welcome to the deep dive. You bring the sources, we dig in, and, well, we pull out the key knowledge you need. Today we're tackling a big one: the psychology of romantic love. A topic everyone seems to have thoughts on. The sources you've given us look at what's really going on, biologically and psychologically, when people fall in love. So our mission today is to unpack some of that science, maybe uncover some surprising dynamics behind romantic connection, all based on these readings.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Forget the rom-coms for a second. These sources really suggest it's less, fate, and more about what's happening in our brains and bodies.
Hormones, behaviors. Okay, let's dive in. The first insight from the sources is pretty striking. It talks about the biological punch love delivers.
It really does. And it makes this bold comparison, basically, that love affects the brain kind of like a drug.
Okay, how so?
Well, what the source highlights is the flood of dopamine that happens when you're falling for someone.
Dopamine, right. And the source actually compares this to the pathways activated by substances like cocaine, is that right?
That's what it says. The same reward pathways. It's intense.
Wow.
And, the source uses this comparison to explain why love can feel so all-consuming, almost like an addiction.
That craving.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You crave being near the person, hearing their voice.
So that intense feeling, that need, almost, the source isn't calling that weakness, but just biology.
Pretty much. It's presented as a biological response to that chemical surge, a drive.
Okay. That explains that early obsessive phase sometimes.
Yeah, the chemical reward for being close.
So from that internal chemistry, where does the source go next? External stuff. Interactions.
It does. It moves to something really simple, but apparently quite powerful.
Eye contact.
Eye contact. Okay, what's the specific claim here?
The source cites research suggesting just 4 minutes of uninterrupted eye contact can significantly boost intimacy.
4 minutes. Wow, that sounds intense. It may be a little awkward.
Maybe, but the science behind it, according to the source, is interesting. It says heart rates actually start to synchronize.
Really? You literally get in sync. Physically, yeah. And there's a hormonal angle, too.
Let me guess. Oxytocin.
You got it. The love hormone. The source says that kind of sustained eye contact boosts oxytocin levels.
So it connects you physically, synchronizes you, and gives you that bonding chemical boost.
Exactly. All from just looking at each other.
Powerful stuff for something seemingly so simple. Okay, what about stereotypes? There's one about who falls faster. Does the source touch on that?
It does, yeah. And the finding it presents kind of flips the common script.
How so?
According to the research cited, boys tend to fall in love faster and also say, I love you first, more often than girls do.
No kidding. That goes against the grain, doesn't it? Does the source offer a why?
It suggests a possible explanation. The idea presented is that men might be more initially stimulated by visual cues, leading to that quicker feeling of attraction.
Okay.
Whereas women, the source posits, might take a bit more time processing factors like emotional safety and security before they label the feeling as love.
So it's potentially a difference in, the pathway or the initial trigger, not necessarily the depth of feeling. Is that how the source frames it?
Yes, exactly. It's presented as a difference in the process of falling, not a value judgment on the emotion itself, which is important.
Definitely interesting. Okay, shifting again. Relationships inevitably involve conflict, arguments. What did the sources say about that? Often feels like the enemy of love.
Right, but this is another area where the sources challenge common thinking. They argue that arguments aren't just okay, but that healthy, respectful conflict is actually essential.
Essential, really. Why? What's the benefit?
Understanding. That's the key. The source suggests that couples who learn to argue respectfully actually get much better at understanding each other's real needs and perspectives.
And that leads to stronger relationships.
That's the finding presented. Significantly longer-lasting relationships compared to couples who just avoid conflict altogether.
Because avoiding it means you never really address the underlying issues.
Pretty much. You don't get that deeper understanding that builds real trust. Makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, it does. Okay, what about those little things couples do, that subconscious stuff?
Ah, yes. The source talks about mirroring. Subconscious mirroring.
Mirroring, like copying each other.
Sort of, yeah. It's when couples, over time, unconsciously start mimicking each other. Their walk, maybe certain phrases they use, even how they laugh.
And this isn't deliberate?
Nope, the source says it's subconscious. It's seen as a psychological sign of empathy and closeness. Your brain just starts aligning you with the person you feel connected to.
Huh. Our body's betraying our feelings.
In a good way, maybe. It's a nonverbal sign of connection.
Okay. And speaking of physical connection, Touch comes up too, right?
Definitely. And the source frames touch, holding hands, hugs, cuddling, as more than just romantic. It calls it healing.
Healing. Okay, is there a biological reason for that too? Back to the hormones. Absolutely. Oxytocin again, obviously, that bonding hormone release.
Right.
But also, crucially, the source says touch lowers cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly. So you get this double benefit. More bonding, less stress. It explains why, as the source notes, a simple hug can feel genuinely therapeutic. It's calming your nervous system.
It's amazing how much is going on chemically with these simple interactions. So, thinking long term now, what does the source say matters most as relationships mature?
It's pretty clear on this, based on the research presented. Emotional safety vastly outweighs physical attraction in the long run.
Emotional safety. Can you unpack that a bit? How does the source define it?
It's about feeling heard, feeling accepted for who you really are, flaws and all, and feeling secure in the relationship itself.
Like you can be vulnerable without risk.
Exactly. The source really emphasizes that while attraction might light the fire, it's that deep emotional connection and security that keeps it burning.
So dopamine starts it, maybe, but oxytocin and feeling safe sustains it.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. That's the picture the source paints.
Okay. Now, the source also mentions potential gender differences and how love is expressed or felt.
It does touch on that. It presents a finding suggesting that girls often feel most loved when they feel listened to, when communication is strong.
Okay, feeling heard. And for boys?
The source suggests boys often express love more through actions, fixing things, providing, protecting, tangible stuff.
Interesting. So different love languages potentially as the source sees it.
Yeah.
And understanding that helps.
Yeah, the source highlights that recognizing these potential differences can prevent a lot of misinterpretations. You know, if your partner shows love by doing, you might appreciate that differently than if you expect constant verbal affirmation, and vice versa.
Seeing the intention behind the action or inaction sometimes.
Right. Appreciating the different ways care is shown.
Makes sense. What about a trickier emotion? Jealousy. Does the source weigh in?
It does. And it acknowledges jealousy is, well, pretty natural, even evolutionary to some extent.
Evolutionary. Meaning?
The source suggests it's partly wired in as a fear of losing someone valuable, a partner, in this context, linked to connection, maybe historically to protecting resources or lineage.
But natural doesn't mean helpful, I guess.
Not at all. The source is quick to point out the danger. Unchecked jealousy destroys trust, flat out.
So what's the healthy approach, according to the source?
Acknowledge the feeling it's real, but then make a conscious choice. Choose communication, choose trust, rather than letting suspicion take over. Manage the feeling. Don't let it manage the relationship.
That's a critical skill. Okay, thinking about feelings again. How we remember things in relationships. The source mentions emotional memory.
Yes, the power of emotional memory. It's a key point.
What's the core idea?
Basically, our brains seem hardwired to remember the emotional content of an experience much more strongly than the factual details.
So you might forget exactly what was said in an argument, but you'll remember how it made you feel angry, sad, understood.
Exactly. Or, on the positive side, you remember how someone made you feel supported, or how you laughed together on a bad day, more vividly than the specific conversation.
And those small emotional moments build up.
That's what the source suggests. Those feelings, feeling safe, happy, comforted, leave really lasting positive impressions that strengthen the bond. It's the emotional residue that matters.
That really rings true. Okay, finally, there was a bonus point in the sources about how love changes over time as it matures.
Yeah, this is a lovely point to end on. It talks about love transitioning, moving from that initial high-intensity passion towards something characterized more by deep emotional stability.
And there's science behind this too, brain activity.
Yes. The source mentions a study finding that long-term couples actually show calmer brain activity when they're together, compared to the frenzy you see in new couples.
So the calm isn't boredom, it's arrival.
That's how the source characterizes it. Not love fading, but love transforming. Moving from the thrill of the chase, that dopamine high, to a state of established, secure trust, deep comfort. It's a different kind of depth.
Wow. Okay, so if we pull all this together, from brain chemistry like dopamine and oxytocin to synchronized heartbeats, the need for healthy conflict, mirroring, the healing power of touch, emotional safety being key, and this shift to calm trust. It's quite a journey.
It really is. It shows love isn't just poetry, right? It's deeply biological, deeply psychological. The sources suggest real lasting love involves actions, respect, that crucial emotional safety net, and it's all tied up with our brain chemistry. Science and sentiment hand in hand.
We've covered a lot of ground based on your sources for this deep dive, and just understanding some of these mechanics, I think, can give you a really useful perspective on your own connections.
Definitely offers a different lens.
So thinking about that last point, the shift from thrill to calm trust as a sign of mature, lasting love, here's something to maybe chew on after this discussion. If that science is right and that peaceful security is the hallmark, what small, everyday things could you intentionally do, starting now, to build exactly that kind of secure, peaceful connection with someone important in your life? What does that look like in practice?